Folks, African Americans are very clear when it comes to police in this country in terms of being targeted. We've seen it for years when it comes to racial profiling. Now it has been confirmed in Ferguson, Missouri. The Department of Justice, they have finished their investigation of the Ferguson Police Department following the shooting death of Mike Brown, which took place in August. The investigation finds that even though African Americans make up 67% of Ferguson's population, they're pulled over for traffic stops 85% of the time, arrested 93% of the time. The report also found that Ferguson cops use their official emails to make egregious jokes about black people. Even one email said President Barack Obama wouldn't be president for long because, quote, what black man holds a job for 4 years? Let's talk about it right now with Jamila Lemieux, senior digital editor at Ebony Magazine, Dr. Jason Johnson, political science professor at Hiram College. Also on Skype in Ferguson is Missouri State Senator Maria Chappelle Nadal. Senator Nadal, I want to go to you. Here's what's interesting. In this particular report, what it shows is that African Americans were stopped, more than likely to be stopped than white drivers, twice as much. Yet 26% less likely to have contraband. Also in this report, what it also laid out is that African Americans, 90% of the people who issued tickets, African American, 93% who arrested African American over a 3-year period. And so what DOJ clearly laid out was that Ferguson has a serious problem when it comes to targeting African Americans.
And you're absolutely right. These statistics that you just mentioned, we were well aware of in the last 6 months, and we've been dealing with it for a long time. What was surprising is that taxpayer dollars were used to send out emails that had jokes about racism. It was despicable, the joke that you talked about earlier, but there was another one talking about the termination of pregnancy, and the woman who was getting an abortion ended up getting a $5,000 check, and the person asked who was the check from, Crime Stoppers. That is overt racism, and to use taxpayer dollars is quite offensive. And I hope that not only we disband this Ferguson Police Department, but we also make systematic changes throughout the region and in the nation.
Jamila and Jason, this is the police department, 99% white. What you also have there, you have a situation where DOJ says they systematically targeted African Americans to essentially pay for city services through their courts when it came to fines.
Yeah. Absolutely. I had the privilege of traveling to Ferguson a number of times since the events of August, and one thing that I heard over and over again when I talked to citizens was that they were not surprised that Mike Brown had been killed in the way that he was killed, that he had been aggressively stopped by Darren Wilson in the way that he was stopped for possibly being suspected of taking something from a corner store or just for jaywalking, because that was never clearly established. This community has this terrible relationship to its police department, and now the DOJ has said, yes, what they were saying was true. And it's unfortunate that we're getting this information after there's already been the decision to not to indict this officer for killing that young man.
Jason, 95% of the people charged with walking in the street in Ferguson, African American. 92% of the folks charged with disturbing the peace, African American.
Yeah, so being black on a sunny day is essentially a crime. And you know, one of the things, just like Jamila, one of the things that I saw when I was there, nobody was surprised, nobody was shocked. And remember, Darren Wilson came from a police department that had been disbanded for engaging in this exact kind of behavior. So it's nice that the Department of Justice has confirmed what everybody knew. The question is going to be, will the Ferguson Police Department even exist, and what will replace it once these sanctions really start coming down?
Senator Nadal, we're also looking at a city council race taking place next week there in Ferguson. There are 4 African Americans on the ballot. One would think that if black folks voted their numbers, they should be elected. How do you see that potentially changing policies there in Ferguson? The city officials there, they've said they are not going to comment on this report until it is fully released to the public.
You know, I have to tell you, when this report does come out, it is going to be eye-opening and jaw-dropping for the community and for the nation. The reports that we have already gotten have been quite substantial. Knowing that police officers allowed dogs to bite individuals who were all black is definitely brow raising. But what I have to say, the report will definitely change the outcome. In a couple of those races, I kind of thought that one of the incumbents would win. Now I don't know. One of the incumbents, as well as a mayor and a former mayor of Ferguson, and I thought that he was going to get reelected, but he has been part of this system that has been broken for decades now, and he has been one of those people who has spoken again and again that there is no racism that exists. And so I think this time, with this information that we are getting right now and with the full report, some of those incumbents are not going to be able to win their reelection. And I hope that this is going to create a sea change for the future that status quo politics is just not going to do. And we want systematic change, not only in Ferguson, but the entire region. We have a problem and an undercurrent of racism that exists all throughout St. Louis, and it's been existing and implemented in different ways. Obviously, we're not experiencing Jim Crow as overtly, but we have other kind of institutional racism that is exercised every single day throughout institutions.
I think it just out at me is when I look at this report again, when you look at the arrests, when you look at those who are being stopped, the key is if African Americans are being stopped twice as much as whites, yet 26% less likely to have contraband, one could say, wait a minute. I look at the other arrests and the other stopping actions, and it's overwhelmingly that there's an issue here in terms of who is being targeted, because if we're getting stopped and we don't have stuff on us,
right.
What does that say about the other arrest?
And what does that say about the number of reports that don't get filed? You know, the number of times that kids are just harassed, that they're just dragged over on the street one way or another. And here's the thing, you know, if you look at just even how Ferguson is shaped, okay, it's not a big area.
Right.
So you know this is targeted behavior by the police. Right. It's not like it's a large metropolitan area.
Absolutely. It's pretty safe to reason that the other people who are being stopped are being observed doing something wrong. So perhaps someone smells marijuana coming from your car or sees you walking down the street carrying a can of malt liquor. Our people are being stopped for being black, and no one can refute that at this point.
Absolutely. Senator Chappelle Dahl, I certainly appreciate you joining us. We will stay on top of this and see how Ferguson responds. Thank you so very much. Folks, coming up, the Affordable Care Act at the Supreme Court, yeah, it's back. Huge stakes, and it could have a direct impact on African Americans, especially those living in the South. We'll break it down for you.